And now it's time to hear from two veteran Republican operatives who bring to the table years of experience when it comes to conventional campaigns. Let's find out what their recommendations are for an election season dominated by a pandemic. Doug Hay is the former Deputy Chief of Staff for former House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. He has also been a communications director for the Republican National Committee and is directly Senior Vice President of Media with Kraft. Sarah Chamberlain is President and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership, a coalition of moderate Republican members of Congress. She is the treasurer of Defending Main Street, its Political Action Committee. Doug and Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. We just heard from Lee Zeldin, Congressman Lee Zeldin, who said that last week the Democratic convention was rife with division and antagonism, and the president was going to, and many of the other speakers, project a picture of unity for the nation. Sarah, let me start with you and get your take on that.
Sure. I think that they tried to do unity. I was disappointed that there were a lot of Republicans that spoke, frankly. I think that you have an internal fight, it should stay within the family and not be broadcast out. But overall, that what Biden had to deal with, he had to.
Great. Doug, let me get yours, and I'm going to ask our team also to help Sarah on her sound for a minute because it's coming in a little bit wobbly. Doug, what are your thoughts on what the Republican challenge is? And you've been through many of them. What do they have to achieve this week in the wake of what the Democrats did last?
Yeah, I think even if you remove COVID from the situation, which is a very difficult thing to do, obviously, Donald Trump has suffered from before and still does now the same problem that Mitt Romney did when he was running against Barack Obama on the key polling question of whether or not that voters feel that Trump, or in that case Romney, identify with voters like them. And so as we have these bizarre fights now about the Postal Service that we're having today, we get away from real issues that affect, I think, everyday Americans and American families. A good example of that, as the RNC has put out now, it's kind of no platform and a statement of bullet points basically on what the second term might look like, is education. There are 2 bullet points for education, and that's it. And what it doesn't do is it doesn't address higher education. Having been a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, with what they're going through right now, what colleges are dealing with is important, and also remote learning, companies like 2U that are real innovators there. How do we fix that process that we're dealing with right now? Similarly with childcare. Childcare, we know if we don't reopen childcare, as Childcare Aware of America says, we can't really restart this economy. Those are just 2 parts of education that should be part of a broader platform. Talk about real issues that connect with voters, and then obviously the issue of COVID, what you're going to do to solve this crisis and then bring the economy back.
Well, do you not think the president will address COVID? I mean, he just gave an emergency use authority to convalescent plasma. They're allowing the expansion of commercial drug testing. Maybe the FDA didn't approve them, but nonetheless, the White House is pushing them. So doesn't he have a stack of things to stay on the COVID front as of this weekend?
He does. The challenge for Donald Trump is whatever he says this week or in the future is still defined by what he has said for the past 4 months. And it wasn't real. It was going to go away kind of magically. Mike Pence had said it would be gone by Memorial Day. When you have 170,000 plus deaths and obviously 10% plus employment right now, it's really the record that's already defined you that is the challenge for him. If there's a vaccine, that's going to be great news, but we're not clear that that's going to happen yet. And as we know with Donald Trump, there's a big blustery announcement. Sometimes the details are a lot more important.
Now, Sarah, your members are admitted moderates. I mean, I've known many members from the House in particular, but also the Senate, that are parts of Republican Main Street. And what they've been arguing for a long time is let's not let the New York finance crowd run over essentially the sensibilities and the ethic of that Main Street conservatism that's been such a mainstay of American politics. So I may be putting words in your organization's mouth, but I've always been a fan of that. But I think, where are they with relations to the message of the president right now? And do they have an anchor in this convention? Do you feel represented in this convention as it unfolds this week?
We really don't. I don't have a member of Main Street speaking. The closest we have is probably Nikki Haley. She is closest to a Main Street. So that's disappointing. And our districts want to hear more than what the president is giving them. They want to talk about issues like education, health, mental health, and the president seem to be giving those. So we are suffering a bit in our districts. Though we will win, it's going to be very difficult to get those suburban women out to vote. But we are hoping that if they do vote for Biden, that they will be ticket splitting.
So, Sarah, you mentioned mental health, which has come up. You've mentioned education, which Doug also mentioned. What are some of the, where does infrastructure fit in? What are some of the things about rebuilding America? Is that on anybody's priority roster right now? Sarah?
No, so I speak to about 200, 250 a week, just like what we're doing now. And they tell me those issues were on the docket back in January, but now it's all COVID and things related around COVID. And so they've switched from that. They don't care right now about transportation infrastructure. They care about the health of their families. They care about making sure pre-existing conditions does not get removed. And they care about trying to get a real way to send their kids back to school. And if they can't send their kids back to school, somebody to help them pay for childcare. Childcare is very expensive. It's a supply and demand issue. And, they're stuck with huge bills that they can't afford. So it's all, they tell me it's COVID, COVID, COVID. That's all they're going to be voting on in November.
Well, thank you. I hear that from a lot of polls as well. Doug, let me ask you not a political question, but kind of a tactical communications. I know you're brilliant at this stuff. I mean, this President Trump, is considered by many to be a Twitter genius, to be a social media genius. And he and his team have been able to go, pick the fights they want to pick and, carry the campaign that they want to do in this area. Do you think that the infrastructure that they're bringing on the social media side to the RNC, to the convention this week, will stand well against what the Democrats did? I hear they're putting together a portal so that thousands of people can come in and tell their stories of Donald Trump's America, if you will. And I'm just interested, as a tactician that knows that world well, how do you think your former colleagues will do in performance?
I think this is where you'll see the biggest difference between Trump 2016 and Trump 2020. In 2016, there was no real Trump campaign. There was real difficulties with the RNC. Like it or don't like it, they are moving forward in lockstep these days, and they'll be very effective tactically and strategically with this. And one of the things that we all know, as we obsess about Donald Trump's, outrage du jour, the tweet of the day, is it's also something that's very effective that he uses. And so often, basically, he will put out a tweet that distracts us from whatever we were talking about earlier in the day or earlier in the week. And essentially, Donald Trump says to us, these are not the droids you're looking for. And we go and follow the tweet. It's a very smart move by the president, one he does often and well.
Well, I mean, you raised an interesting point, and I want to ask Sarah the same question. But from a messaging perspective, I heard him in the last election, 2016, say 3 different things about the wall and Mexico in 2 days. And each constituency heard it, but nobody forced a reconciliation. So what is happening in America that you can hear different things on different days, but it's not like there's no reconciliation at the end of the day? I sort of feel like, reconciliation of budgets, reconciliation of Twitter. So Doug, and then Sarah?
Yeah, I'd go back to the president's speech, exactly your point. The president's speech when he said that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. That's what the media took away from it. What evangelicals at that speech took away from it was, I'm going to return power back to you. And that was a powerful message for them, and they heard something very different than we did. The other thing is with Donald Trump, you're going to hear what you want to hear from Donald Trump. If you like him, whatever he says, you're going to agree with. If you don't, you've already made up that mind as well. In a certain case, it's Donald Trump acting as, I would say, a professional wrestling heel, a bad guy. If you cheer him, he loves it. If you boo him, he loves it, as long as you're watching.
Sarah, what are your thoughts on that, on the messaging and, what seems to me to be some incongruent moments?
I totally agree with Doug, but I will tell you, suburban women have stopped listening to his messaging. It's all over the place, so they've decided to just tune it all out. Sometimes they tell me that Donald Trump's like the ex-husband that they got rid of. He talks too much and says anything that people want to hear. So they've stopped listening. When I talk to 200, 250 women a week, they have no idea what he's tweeting out anymore.
That's fascinating. Let me just in conclusion ask you, since Sarah, you raised it, about where women are in this election. Nancy Lamond, whom you both know from AARP, recently had a piece in The Hill. It was very interesting. And in it, she said both parties are neglecting the most important voter out there, who are women over 50 years old. They vote in mass, and when they say they're going to vote, which is and they do vote, whereas there's sort of a chase of the younger generation, the millennials, et cetera. Does Nancy have a point that women over 50 is being neglected right now and really matters? And two, where do you think they're going if they can be identified as a, no group is completely homogenous, but it'd be interesting. Sarah?
Talk about that when I them every week. That's why Defending Main Street is talking to them. They have not made up their mind yet where they're going on the presidential, but we at Main Street are trying to make sure they are making up their mind voting for the Republican members of Main Street. But you're right, no one's talking to them, and they don't like that. They've come a long way. They want to be respected, and especially with the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote, they are going to vote, and we need to go and capture their votes in order to win.
Doug, what are your thoughts on that? And help us wrap up here.
Sarah makes a really good point about ticket splitting. And one of the best things that Joe Biden has going for him is that he's not Hillary Clinton. There were a lot of soft Republicans or independent voters who were never going to vote for Hillary Clinton but wanted Joe Biden to run in 2016. That's a big opportunity for him.
Well, with that, I want to thank Doug Hay of Kraft and Sarah Chamberlain, president of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I mean, I hate to say years because it sounds like you've been around forever, but I know you haven't, but you really do know the convention and political world well. Thank you so much for joining me.